So I wrote a confession of faith for us to take us through these days in this series. Shared it last time. I want to convince you that it's true. Here it is. If you're in a pit right now, know this, that God will get you through it. It probably won't be easy or painless or quick. But if you trust him, God will use the pit for good, for your good. So decide right now, no despair and no stupid stuff. Don't give up on him and don't give up on you. Trust him, wait on him, and surrender to the one who loves you most of all. Just don't give up. Listen, I didn't write that out of thin air. It actually comes from a single case study from the life of someone who was literally stripped of everything important to them and thrown into a pit. And yet he rose to become to become a person of real destiny and greatness, because that's what God created him for. And so for the fall, we're going to work our way through the life of Joseph of the Old Testament. And so quick, here's the short version of his life. He's the youngest of 11 sons at the time that he was born. He's the son of the Old Testament patriarch Jacob. And Jacob favored him, and not just favored him, but he placed him on a pedestal among his family. He had this special tunic made, this garment made for him to show that he was the favored son, the youngest, not the oldest, the youngest of the 11. But on top of that, Joseph had dreams, these vivid dreams, and all of these dreams were of him ruling over his brothers. And as a younger brother, he felt compelled to tell his older brothers about his rulership dreams. Now, can we pause right here? Look, I grew up with 3 brothers, 4 boys, no daughters. I grew up on a family farm in West Texas. I'm in the younger half of those 4 boys. Let me just tell you, I got clobbered for way less than that. And so the brothers, they seethed with resentment and anger and jealousy. And so on this nondescript day, they ambushed him. They tore his special tunic off of him, and they throw him in a cistern, a pit, a deep pit, intent on just leaving him there to die from dehydration and exposure. And they dipped his torn tunic in goat's blood and planned on telling their father that a wild animal must have devoured him. See, this is all that we found. And so he's stuck in a literal pit that he can't get out of. But this is deeper in Joseph's life, and it's similar to you. It's a different kind of pit as well. So the word for pit in the Hebrew we talked about last time is this word bor. That word gets used all over the Old Testament for sort of these multiple layers of what pit is, not just an agricultural cistern, but also for someone who is suffering. But not just suffering, it's someone suffering in a way that they don't think they can climb out of it. They think they're stuck and that there's no way out. That's the pit. And at some point, I think most of us are going to find ourselves in such a pit of suffering or despair, a pit that we don't think we can get out of, maybe one that you're in at the moment. But Joseph rises out of that pit. That's this message. A pit that he cannot get out of himself. He rises from it. He gets out. And so the question is, how did he do that, and why did it happen to him? The answer to those questions are going to show you how to rise from the pit you're in 2. So what happened in that pit? 80 miles north of their home in Shechem or Dothan, thrown into a shepherd's and agricultural pit. What is it that happened in that pit that lifted him out? I mean, what happened that raised him out of the pit of his own making, so to speak? He dug it, so to speak. He fell into it. Okay, he got a little shoved. I get that. But here's the answer. Are you ready? I have a definite answer for what happened in that pit. Are you ready for it? We don't know. It's not recorded. It's not recorded in the text of Genesis 37. All that we know is that at exactly the right moment, in just this really short window of time, in between the time that they throw him into a pit and before they leave, at just the right time, there is this caravan of traders in the vastness of that flat plains in the northern Judea, that a caravan comes exactly to their campsite, and he is pulled out and whisk away to a far away land. So what is it that happened in the pit? Well, we don't know exactly, but look at what we do know. The Joseph who was raised out of that pit is immediately a different person than the Joseph who was thrown into the pit. We see it in the text. I'm going to show it to you next time. He comes out of that pit a completely different person than the one thrown in. And so, look, it just takes a little logic. Something happened in the pit that changed him. And so what was it? Okay, it's not recorded. I've made that point. But there are a couple of passages in the Old Testament that could show us what happened in that pit. Sam read one of those to you a moment ago. Psalm 40 is an experience of David in the pit and what God did. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He brought me up out of the pit of destruction, out of the miry clay, out of the mud there. He set my feet upon a rock, making my footsteps firm. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to my God. Many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord. How blessed is the one who has made the Lord his trust. There's the pit experience from David, but there's one. It's useful, that's helpful, but there's another. And I think this other really shows us how you rise. It comes from the experience of Jeremiah the prophet, who lived in exactly the same region in the 6th century BC. What was going on around him was just absolute fear and chaos. Jerusalem is about to fall from the siege of the Babylonians in 586 BC. And Jeremiah, the prophet, he is the nation's prophet, and he is in Jerusalem. And it turns out that he is not preaching health, wealth, and prosperity in that moment, which is really upsetting to the nation's leaders. And so they arrest him and they throw him into a cistern that's in the complex, the housing complex around the palace complex. And so he's thrown in. We know that from Jeremiah 38, that they threw him in and he sunk deep into the muck at the bottom of that cistern. And so he is there in this isolated darkness for presumably days. But then suddenly, unexpectedly, a face appears at the mouth of that cistern that Jeremiah is thrown into. It's a royal servant who loved him, and he secretly comes and lowers a rope with rags and they tied onto the end, and he gently pulls Jeremiah out of the pit. But, okay, we know that, but even more than that, Jeremiah recorded his experience in the pit. He recorded it. And so now we know how to rise from a pit. Lamentations 3. Jeremiah, it's the writing of Jeremiah. Now, Lamentations is written in a strongly poetic structure. Very strong poetic structure. It's written it's written as a poem. And so read it that way. He's about to show us how to rise from the pit. And so here it is, Lamentations 3. It starts in verse 52. Jeremiah writes, my enemies without cause hunted me down like a bird. They have silenced me, this prophet, they have silenced me in the pit. They have placed a stone on me, presumably meaning a stone over the mouth of the pit, so he's in utter darkness and isolation. Verse 54, waters flow over my head, and I said, I am cut off. This is how he feels. He feels like he's drowning. He's so claustrophobic, he feels like he's drowning in the pit. Verse 55, and I called on your name, O Lord, out of the lowest pit. Listen to verse 56. And you have heard my voice. Do not hide your ear from my prayer for relief, from my cry for help. He's quoting himself there. Verse 57. And you, God, drew near when I called on you. And you said, do not fear. Verse 58. O Lord, you have pleaded my soul's cause. You have redeemed my life. And then we know that he rose from that pit. Here's Jeremiah's experience in the pit, and it's going to teach us how to rise from the one maybe that we're in. And so let's put it in a single idea, all right? Let's put it all in just one complete idea. Listen to it. Here's the whole message here. You can't climb out of a pit by self-rescue, but you can rise by calling on the name of the Lord. It brings him near. This is just coming straight from the text. It brings him near. It calms your fear. He takes up your cause, and he redeems your life from the pit. I want to show that to you out of this passage. So here is how to rise. Last week is how to fall into a pit. Today is how to rise from the pit. And I'm going to give you 3 principles. Number 1, here's the first one. It ought to be short. It's easy to understand. Number 1, just be honest about the pit you're in. Just be honest about the pit. That's what he's doing. Again, I'm just following the text. That's what Jeremiah is doing. Verses 52 through 54, my enemies hunting me down like a bird. They've silenced me in the pit. That's important because he was a prophet. They couldn't stand what he was saying, so their solution was to silence him, and they throw him in the pit. They put a stone over the top. And so in this very distinct poetic language, metaphorically, he feels like he's drowning in that cistern. And so he's just being honest about what he's in. And maybe you need that too. For you, it may be about you just being honest about the circumstance you're in. And what is the point? The point is this. Number 1, don't minimize it. That's just not facing the pit that you're in. You know, sometimes we're in trouble. Sometimes we are. Minimizing the pit is just a way not to have to face the pit that you're in. Minimizing is this weak attempt to keep from dealing with reality. So don't minimize it, but also don't exaggerate it. The pit is not the end of your life. The pit is no reason to have no hope. I don't like doing it, and I just did it. I hate those double negative sentences. You know, why don't you just say it straight? Here it is straight. If you're in the pit, you have hope. You just don't know it yet. Don't exaggerate it. Exaggerating your pit just paralyzes you. And you're making yourself believe that it's impossible to get out when it is very possible. It's just not possible by self-rescue methods. So listen, you don't have to accept that the pit is your destiny, but you do have to admit that you're there And this is where grace begins. The point of it, the reason for it, the reason to be honest is not to wallow in anything. It's so that it can move you to the point at which grace begins. And so grace begins here. I'm saying it. This is the pit I'm in. I got here by betrayal or by my own actions or by circumstances beyond me, but I'm here and I can't rescue myself. There is the starting point of grace. And maybe you need that honesty. The first principle, not hard to understand, just be honest about the pit. Here's number two. Here's what, man, this is the core of it here. Here's what Jeremiah did. In the darkness of that pit, number two, here's the principle, called on the name of the Lord. Now that is so pregnant with meaning and power. He called on the name of the Lord. Verse 55, I called on your name, O Lord, out of the lowest pit, and you have heard my voice. And then more happens. I want us to dig into that. So, why that phrase? Why the phrase, I called on your name? Why not just, I called out to you, O Lord? Why did he say, I've called on your name? Calling on the name is an act of faith. When you're calling on an infinite God with an infinite power and an infinite love for you and an infinite wisdom around you, a God that you could never fully conceive, what do you call him? What do you call him? There's no single label for a God like that. That's why in the Old Testament, you'll find more than 200 names for God. It's this effort to describe a being who's incomparable. I mean, there's not a single identifier that could fully encompass who he is and what he can do in your life. And so the name of God identifies who he is and what he can do in any specific situation. And so knowing his name, embracing it as who he is and what he does, that does a supernatural work in you. I've said something so important there. To call on his name begins a supernatural work in you. His identity will begin to surround you and provide for you. It gives you the assurance that no matter how unpredictable your life is becoming, his name protects and provides and guides your steps. I got to illustrate this. You know, out of those 200 names, there is this set of nine names that are called the covenant names of God. Lots of books written about that, these 9 covenant names of God. And what makes them important is they are the names that God calls himself. And so they are these hyphenated names. You've heard them. Let me remind you, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals you. Jehovah Shalom, the God who is peace. And so it just keeps going. Do you know most people can name 7 or 8? Almost no one can recite the last one. And I think it is the most meaningful. The least known of those 9 covenant names of God, I think is the most meaningful to me. In fact, it's found in the very last verse of Ezekiel. 48 chapters of this prophecy, and the very last sentence of the book, there is this name that I want you to embrace if you're in the pit. It is the name Jehovah Shammah. Jehovah Shammah. You know what it means? He's there. The God who is there. Wherever you have fallen, wherever you're imprisoned, wherever you're ensnared, even at the bottom of a dark, muddy pit, he's there. And it answers the question. So Jeremiah calls on his name. And where was God when he was thrown into the pit? He was there. Last week, We remembered one of the worst days in our nation's history, September 11, 2001. And so there's a woman named Janelle who is the last survivor picked out of the rubble of the Twin Towers when they came down. And so she's told her story many times. She said that day she was living a life that wanted nothing to do with God. But it was just so strange to her. The moment that the planes hit, she instinctively called out to him, the God she didn't want. And so she started down the only open stairwell in her building, as you know, many flights of stairs. And all the way down, she was praying for God to be with her, for God to be around her. The God she didn't want just a few moments ago, she was desperately praying for him to be all around her. And there was this certain point that she had to stop and catch her breath. And to move faster, she was removing her shoes so she could go faster down the steps. But suddenly, the building began to buckle and millions of tons of concrete and steel began imploding, and it took her down with it. And she said, sometime later, she awoke pinned in by all of that debris. And she poured her heart out for God to be there with her. And for a day, no one came. But she just kept praying and asking God to be with her. And then she said, I heard one voice. All I had heard was just beepers and sirens in the distance. I'd never heard anything but that. But then I heard one voice, and there was just this small space that I could get my hand out of and wave. And she said, I'm here. And the person said, I'll get help, and I'll not let go of your hand until you get out. And she said, that is exactly what he did. And at the moment that they pulled the last piece off and she was freed, she didn't see him. She asked the rescuers. They said, what are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about. There was no one there. And the experience is so real and tangible to her, she fully believes God's presence was an angel with her in the darkness of that isolation and rubble because she called on the name of the God who was there. And listen, that's gotta be your first act in the pit. That's the starting point of your rise from the pit. That this has got to become the repetitive action in the pit, the practice that takes over your thoughts and over your consciousness. It's got to take over your hope and desire. Call on the name, the power and sufficiency and grace and mercy of the one who holds that name, the God who is there. And here's what will happen. Something will happen in you. Jeremiah tells us, and you've heard many Christ followers talk about this. There's going to be this point that you're calling out to him, maybe not in the first 5 minutes, maybe not in the first hour, maybe it is a day later that you're going to suddenly know what Jeremiah says. He knew there's going to come this moment. Verse 56, Jeremiah says, you've heard my voice. And there is a tangible confidence that flows in you. That moment that his spirit bears witness with your spirit, and you know that he has heard your voice. You're going to start experiencing that God is there and that he has heard. And Jeremiah said, here's what followed. Here's what I called on your name. And there came this moment at some point that I knew you had heard my voice. And it had two effects in me. It's in the text, verse 57. You drew near. Do you know how many times A Christ follower has said that to me. I was in this absolute terror of a situation, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and then there came this moment that I felt his presence. I felt it. I knew that he was near me. And that gives this incredible peace. In fact, here's how you know it happened to Jeremiah. Here's the second one, 57. The first phrase of 57 is you drew near. The second phrase is, this is how you knew. This is how you know he drew near. Verse 57, the second half, you said, God, to me, do not fear. You'll lose your fear of the pit. You're still in the pit, but you're no longer afraid of the pit. You're just not afraid anymore. When you're in the pit, these are the two essentials: to know that God is present there with you and to lose your fear. And how do you get it? By calling on the name of the Lord. That's number two. That is the core of it. That is the power of it. Now, number three, here's the last. Number three, how do you rise from the pit? First of all, you get honest about it. Secondly, you call on the name of the Lord. Thirdly, you trust in your advocate. I don't know why Jeremiah does this, but he does it, and we're just going to follow the text. Verse 58, "O Lord, you have pleaded my soul's cause." That's legal language. That's the language of an advocate, a legal advocate. You have pleaded my soul's cause. I mean, this is who Jesus says he is. The New Testament tells you over and over, this is who Jesus is for you in the pit. He is your advocate. 1 John 2, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. He pleads your case for you before the judge of the universe. He's the best defense attorney in the universe, and the reason why is that he already has paid the price of what you owe God for your rebellion. He's the one who's already paid the price of the pit. He's already been in the pit of destruction for you, and risen, supernaturally risen from it. And so he is standing there to say, I bear the punishment for anything that would cause the God of the universe to reject you, and so I plead your case, your soul's cause before him. But this language, this word means a second thing. It's not just a legal defense. It's not just an advocate, but it also means an intercessor, He is, secondly, your throne room intercessor. An intercessor is the one who stands in the gap between your need, your weaknesses and burdens, and a higher authority. An intercessor is the one who stands in between your insufficiency and God's total sufficiency, and he brings your need to the presence of God. How do I know that? How do I know that is Jesus? That is who Jesus is for you? Because Romans 8 says that's who he is. Jesus Christ, the one who died, more than that, the one who was raised, who is at the right hand of God. He indeed is interceding for us. Hebrews 7:25 says the same thing. Therefore, he is able to save those forever who draw near to God through him, since Jesus always lives to make intercession for them. He is there pleading your soul's cause. Number three, he is also your rescuer and redeemer. Look at how it closes. Verse 58. Last phrase, you have redeemed my life. That means rescue. Redemption means rescue. He is your rescuer and redeemer. That is exactly what the New Testament says, Colossians 1. For he rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins, the one who went to the ultimate pit, the pit of the grave for you. He is your rescuer. He will draw you. He will pull you out of the pit. And so let's close it. Somewhere unrecorded in the story of Joseph, he put all his trust in God. Somewhere unrecorded, Joseph saw God as his advocate and intercessor and redeemer. And I think it was in the darkness of the pit. And the reason I think it was in the darkness of the pit is that when he was lifted out, we can see it in the text, he is a completely different Joseph than who went in the pit. Now he's taken into less than ideal circumstances. Here's his rescue. He's rescued out of the pit, sold into slavery, whisked away to a foreign land. And it begins a journey for Joseph that actually, in the hard circumstances, is healing and transforming for the soul of Joseph. His trip to Egypt, enslaved, treated unjustly, imprisoned, will become the training ground for forming him. He needed forming on an anvil. And so he's going to learn to trust in God by having to trust in God. He's going to learn waiting by waiting on God, 13 years in fact. He's going to learn grace by watching God's grace come over him over and over and over. And those are the things that rebuilt him. Those are the things that made him faithful. They built his strength to endure. They made his gifts usable in the hands of God. I want us to bow together. And we're going to move into a moment of worship here. Because I want you to make this real in you, where you will turn to your advocate, your intercessor, your rescuer. You will turn to him and say, I trust you. So our worship team is coming out and they're going to sing over you for a moment and then ask you to join in lifting your voice, putting your trust in him. You, in this moment, just pray and hear these words. In a moment, they're going to say, stand and worship with them. Just trust in him.
The blessing and the pain, you are worthy. Whether you say yes or no way, you are worthy. Through it all, I choose to say, you are worthy. Never stop singing your praise. I'll never stop singing your praise. When I finally see your face, I'll cry worthy. And when you wipe these tears away, I'll cry worthy. Above every other name, you are worthy. I'll never stop singing your praise. I'll never stop singing your praise. No, I'll never stop singing your praise. I'll never stop singing your praise. I'll give you my worship. You still deserve it. You're worthy. You're worthy. You're worthy of my song. I pour out your praises and blessing and breaking. You're worthy. You're worthy. Jesus, you're worthy of my song. You're from you are all, and to you are all. You deserve the glory.
Let's pray together. Let's pray. Father, we just lift up your name as worthy of all of our devotion and surrender and worship. Because we faith say that you're the one who draws us out of the pit. You're the one who lifts us out of the miry clay. You're the one who sets our feet in a solid place, and we look to you to be that in our lives. We pray it now in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, before you go, I want to say, I want you to be open to our prayer areas at the back of the room here. You can see both of those prayer areas. If you have any need at all that we could pray with you about, or a burden, but especially if you have never asked Christ into your life, go there and say, pray with me to ask Christ to be my Lord and leader. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being a part of this experience. We've been in God's presence. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you next time. Bless you.